and I am here to talk to you all about text today. What I'd like to do is take you through a couple of the different tools and panels we're going to be using. Incidentally, there's a lot of little tips and tricks that you're going to learn about Photoshop along the way. So let's start first by introducing the tool and introducing different ways to use the tool. I'm going to come down here, turn on my mouse pose for you. I'm going to come down here to the text tool. If I click on it, I get the text tool, and I get some options up here for that. Well, it's thinking about it. Here are my options. If I click and hold, I get some other options for the text tool. Horizontal type, vertical type, and then these vertical and horizontal mask tools. You're not going to be using any of these. This is going to be the main tool that you'll use. So T is the shortcut for that tool. Alrighty, so first things first. Notice what's happening with my type tool. As I move it into the canvas area, I get this I-beam. Now the I-beam is going to tell me that when I click once, I'm going to get the ability to start to type. And so we see right now that I've got the cursor. I've just clicked the one time, and Minion Pro is going to be the font. It's going to be regular, 12-point, sharp, which has to do with anti-aliasing. Gives us our alignment here, our color, and then our font panel. This is going to be the next area that I want to introduce. If I click on this, it pulls up the new panel for fonts. And of course I still have the ability to change the character, the typeface. I also have the ability to change the font size, leading, kerning, tracking, and then a couple other options down here. But we're going to be getting into that here in a little bit. What I'd like to also show you, here I'm going to go ahead and type my name. Alright, now what I want to do is I want to get out of this. And so the way to do that, if I press return right now, that's not going to do the trick because it just gives me another line. What I need to do is I need to do something special. So I'm going to press and hold the command button and then hit return. And that will allow me to get out of that text. To go back into it, I simply take my text tool and click on it, and then I'm back in. If I press command and return again, I get out of that point text tool. Now the other point text, or the other way that text works, is by an area text. So if I click and drag, I get what looks like a marquee selection of marching ants. But when I let go, it gives me a box here. And if you can see, there's this little blinking cursor. Here, I'll hit a space bar a couple times. So what's going to happen inside this box is as I start to type the text, it's going to wrap around inside this area. So I'm going to go ahead and type the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Now the reason why we type that sentence is because it's got every letter in the English alphabet in it, which I thought you might like to know. Alright, couple things. If I double click, I'll get one word. If I triple click, I'll get the entire line. And if I quadruple click, I will get the entire paragraph. In this case, triple click is all I needed. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it. Copy, Command C, paste, 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 paste. And notice how it's wrapping around under there. Now if I keep pasting it, it'll go to the end of that, but it'll keep going. What it shows is this little plus down here in the box. And so that indicates that I need to drag this out a little bit more to give it more space. And as soon as I do, I'm set. Alright, so we're doing pretty good. What I would like to do is I'd like to show you alignment. So the first thing that you need to learn with this is if I click on alignment, it will jump into these different alignments, but there's shortcuts for these. And I think that these are relevant shortcuts, so let's bring them up. So the first shortcut is going to be Command-Shift-C for center, and that will center things. Command-Shift-R for right, and then Command-Shift-L for left. Got this weird kind of spaces up here, so I'm going to just double-click on the space area, and I'll select just that weird space, hit delete, and it's gone. Alright. So let's move this around a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit Command Return, and that sets that text. Now if I press the Command tool, I can actually click and move this. So Command is the quick move tool on the fly. Press Command on this one to click on it, Alright, so I need to go into the move tool, and then when I command click on Christopher, now I can move this. Alright, the next thing that I want to do is I want to increase the size of this text. So there's a couple ways to do that. If I go back to my text tool, press the T key, click on this, now I'm in here. Of course I could dial it in, and I'm going to show you that way here in a moment, but what I like the best is to press and hold the command button while the text tool is active. I get the bounding box, and just like normal with the bounding box, I can press and hold the command and shift button together, and as I start to drag out here, oops, I'm just missing it. There we go. Now as I start to drag, hold the command and shift, and that's going to constrain it. If I hold the option button, it'll make it big from the center, and that's what I want. Okay, so far so good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to set this font so it's a different font. Minion Pro is the font that it starts with. So I'm going to hit Command Return to set that. And now this is kind of important. Hit Return on your keyboard one more time, or as many times as it takes for you to see this Minion Pro. Now that we're in the Minion Pro, I can go ahead and type in any font that I want. Let's say Bank Gothic. Alright, so Bank Gothic is what pops in there, so if I hit Return, it'll go ahead and switch this to Bank Gothic. Well, that doesn't quite fit on the page. I would have to move it around. So what if I wanted to check a bunch of different fonts? I could go ahead and hit Return again, and this time, I think this is really cool. You just hit the arrow keys, and that'll start to take you through all of your different fonts until you find one that you think is neat. Alright, that's kind of Captain Morgan-y, I guess. So we can click on this downward arrow, and I see a bunch of different types of fonts here. This O is an open type font, and this T is a true type font. And that just gives you the understanding of where the font comes from and some of the things that you can do to it in the at the end of the day. Open type fonts typically give you more options than others. So what I want to also show you is this little itty bitty sample here, and really it doesn't help you one bit to have it so small. So to get it bigger, we're going to go up to Photoshop, Preferences, Type, and that'll take us right to the type preferences. And right here, Show Preview Size, we can click on that, and go ahead and go right to Huge. Your displays are always going to be big enough to be able to show that. Now when I go in here, I have much bigger samples to look at, and I think this is much more helpful. While it might take a little longer to get around, you can see exactly what's going on a lot better. So I like this commercial script. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so what about getting a new font into your computer? Well, you're on a PC, I can't help you very much, but on a Mac, we can go to Safari, and there's a ton of different fonts up here. That fire image is going to come into play here in a little bit. We're going to look for 1001 free fonts. There's a couple other websites out there like Duff Font, but I like 1001 free fonts. It works really well. We're going to get a fire font, and sure enough, there's a whole category of fire fonts. I like this char font. So if you've got a Windows machine, you can download it here, and then you are on your own. But if you've got a Mac, you can click on it, and the newer Macs will instantly start a download up here, so we can see our download. Click on this little magnifying glass, or double-click on the file itself. We're going to double-click on the file, and that opens up the zip. Cool. Now if I go back to char, I can see in my working files there's a new folder, char, and this char TTF file. Now if I double click on that, it opens up. It says, hey, are you sure you want to open this? Yeah, I am. Fontbook is the application that you would use, and just simply install the font. Say install, we're good to go. So it brings the fonts in, validates the fonts, and now char is going to be a brand new font that we have. I was testing out vision problems in here. Sometimes I'll start in Fontbook just to see how a specific font looks with my logo or with my text before I bring it on into Illustrator or something like that. So that's what's happening here. So I've got char here. What I'd like to do now is close some of these windows and go back to Photoshop. Alright, so if I hit return, now we're looking for char BB. So okay, I get what's going on here. I have to save out this file and restart the program, and that would load char in there. So let's go ahead and do that. Save this as a Photoshop file. Pull it text. This should just take 1 moment. Cool. Quit the program. Say OK. Alright, Photoshop will reload. This will just take a second, and then char is going to be one of the options that we can choose. I grab both of these files this time and drag them in. Okay, so I want to make sure my text tool is active. I hit return, and let's try char db. Good enough. I hit return again, and now Christopher is set to char. Now, I told you earlier that I was going to show you how to dial in and change the font a couple different ways. Well, Christopher is what's selected right now, and it says that it's 120.66 font. Well, I can click here and get rid of that 66 and hit return, and that's going to make it so it's 120 and not 120.66. But I can also start to scrub that font up, and as I let go, it's now 146, and I think that that looks pretty nice. The alignment on this is from the left-hand side, and that's what that little indicator right there is telling me. But if I want it to be emanating from the center, Command-Shift-C will pop it to the center. Now, the text itself, I want it to be aligned to the exact middle of the artboard. I'm going to get rid of this quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog by clicking on the eyeball. And now what I'm going to do is I want to select everything on the page. So I'm going to come up here to select and go to all. In the future, it's Command-A. Oops. All right. And if I'm in my Move tool, I get some options here up at the top in the option bar. One of those centers this in the vertically, and then the other one's going to center it horizontally. So I've got this right smack dab in the middle. I think that looks pretty cool. Cool enough anyway. All right, fine. It's cheesy, but we'll move on. I want to deselect this, and now I want to pull that fire image in. And so see if I've got that pulled in as well. Sure enough, I do. So I'm going to click on the fire image and just simply click and hold and drag and drop. Now I'm going to press Shift as I drop it down, so it'll start right in the center. All right, cool. So now with my fire image, I'm going to transform it. So Edit, Free Transform, Command-T in the future. It gives me my bounding box, and I know that it's going to be covering the other thing, and that's okay. It's nothing to really worry about too much. Alright, so I've got this big fire image back here, and it's looking a little pixelated right now because I'm making it so much bigger, but when I hit return, it'll kind of resize. Now, it's not the best. I wouldn't want this for print or anything like that, but it does the job. So if I drag this underneath my name, Christopher, it doesn't really show up so much. Let's talk about coloring this text. So the first thing I could do to color the text is click on my foreground color, and that pulls up the color picker. I can go ahead and say I want this to be kind of the yellow of a fire. So I select yellow here. Sure enough, here's what it is, current versus new. I hit OK. And then, just like I'm filling, I can hit Option Delete. Oopsie, wrong layer. Gotta have your text layer selected. Option Delete, and it'll fill it with the color that you wanted. Now in this case, I don't want this yellow. I want fire. And so what I can use is something called the eyedropper. This is a new tool. Click on the eyedropper, and it allows me to go right to this orange of the fire. And notice what this little eyedropper ring is telling me. The yellow below is the color that I currently have, and the orange above is going to be the color that I'm going to select if I go ahead and release my selection. So I like this orange right here. That's nice. And now if I wanted to switch that, I could press the X key, and now my background color and foreground color are going to be different. So let's see this nice yellow. And notice what's happening over here. As I hit the X key, it just switches back and forth. And so I've got two different colors to play with. Well, I can try Option Delete or Command Delete. Option Delete is going to work much better right there. So this is good. All right, we're making something very cheesy here, and I think we have to be just okay with it because it's what it is. So we've covered so far a couple of things, but what if I want to actually turn this fire selection, the actual thing of the text, into my name? Well, this is kind of an interesting tip. If I click on this little color preview of the text, it doesn't really do anything. So if I command click on it, it does. And it turns my name Christopher into a selection. And this is one of the easiest ways to do pixel selection for text inside Photoshop. Now, understand that the second we move this, it's not going to be editable. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my move tool, drag this whole thing down here into this fire section. I like this. And now I'm going to switch my layer and turn that off. So I've got Christopher as my text turned off, and I've moved this selection into my name into the fire. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer via copy, which is going to be layer, new, layer via copy, which is Command J. And everybody knows that's my favorite thing when I jump something. So what we see here is this new invisible layer. So if I turn off the back layer, here we are. I've got Christopher kind of all in flames, which is kind of ridiculous, but also the effect that I'm going for. And so I have these two on top of one another. If I drag one above the other, I can start to do some stuff with this. I can blend these layers, but we're going to come back to that in a little bit. Just remember that this layer, I'm going to go ahead and title it Uneditable Christopher. And then I've got Christopher. The cool part about Christopher is it's always editable. I can just simply click in here with the T tool, and I can come through and start to edit all of these things. But this layer of Christopher is not editable. I can't do anything with it. When I click, I'm making new objects, new things to do, because these are just literally pixels that have been cut off of this image. All right, we're doing good here. Let's talk a little bit more about the character panel and some of the other things that we can do. First things first, we'll turn off the uneditable and go to the edited. Press the command button. I can move this back. If I want to go to my move tool, Command A, we'll center it again. Good. Deselect. Alrighty, so what I want to talk about now is how far apart these different characters are. So if I go to my text tool, press T, click in here, I can see that the C and the H have a nice separation between them, but something like the R and the H don't. So if I click, my cursor tells me that the H blends into where the R is, and the R, it doesn't really stop at the H, but it's made a connection for it. So if I hit space, we see that this little point right here changes as they sit next to the H. So it goes into it, so it makes it look like the characters are together. Now we can control this. This is called kerning. And so now what I want to do is I'm going to show you a trick for kerning. There's this little guy right here, and I can start to scrub that to the left and to the right, and that will start to kern things as well. But what I think is going to be the best, I'm going to go ahead and clear this out completely, is this option button, option and arrows. As I hit those option arrow, it just spreads the characters apart and brings them together just ever so slightly, so that you can be kind of finicky about this, but you can control how these characters sit together. Like, for instance, the O and the T seem pretty far apart, so we could probably bring those a little closer together. And I like the idea of the S and the T coming together just a little bit. It should look like a fire, right? This E and H are pretty close. That's good enough. Let's bring those together too. All right. So that's a little better. Yeah. Okay, so we've done that just by simply pressing the option button and clicking in there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and scroll out just a little bit. so we can see the whole image. What if I wanted this text to be bigger? So there's a couple of ways to do that on the fly, but I've already showed you the scrubby way, and I've showed you the way to do it with the command button. The next way that I think is important involves hiding this selection. So I've selected it by double-clicking on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to Select. Let's see, it might be under Edit here. I only know the shortcut, so I don't know where it actually lives. Well, I'm not going to waste your time looking for it. Command H will hide your selection. Now if I hit return or something like that, that'll get rid of all my text, so you want to be very careful at this point. Now the way to make it bigger is pressing Command, Shift, and then the period button will make it increase by 2 intervals. Now if I add the option button to this, it's going to make it jump by 10 intervals. And I think that's good. Let's make it as big as possible, right? Okay, good. So we've got the text bigger, and then I can make it smaller by 10 by hitting the Command, Option, Shift, comma, and that makes it smaller by 10. So period and comma. What I really think this is the greater than and less than sign. So if I make it greater, it makes it bigger. If I make it less, it makes it smaller. But the period and comma are what shows up when we click that. I want this to be as big as possible. Too big. Perfect. All right. So we've got my kerning taken care of, and I've got my quick size taken care of. If I press Command Return, that makes it so that weird selection's not there, and when I double click again, it's right back. So no big whoop. Command Return. All right. So a couple other things that are going on here. This font specifically is an all caps font, but if I hit Return, I can start checking some of these other fonts that aren't all caps. Okay, I need to make this a little smaller too. Do that here. Alright, let's see if we've got some options here. Nope, not with this one. Carriage return. Let's find one that does work. Here we go. This one might do it. So if I click on this all capitals, it'll instantly shift the letters to all caps or not. And so you have some options there, which I think are pretty cool. I like this font too. It looks pretty sweet. I can also go right into italic or make it bigger, bold. I can make it camel caps so that the first capital letter is bigger than all the other capital letters. I can turn them into numerators or denominators. Again, this is the regular. And then I can do underline or strike through, depending on what effect I want to get here. Now, this little anti-aliasing business, you'll see it up here in your option bar, is something that I would just completely disregard unless you're dealing with itty-bitty text. As we change it now, you'd be hard-pressed to see that change as I move it around. You'll only see it in very, very small text, and so for our purposes, sharp is going to work just fine. Alright, so we've done quite a bit of stuff. We've played with the alignment, we've played with the position on the artboard, we've played with changing the text, we've also played with making the text bigger and smaller, we've changed the sample size, we've also talked about this anti-aliasing, how to align the text, how to choose colors for the text. We went in and chose pixels for a text by by command clicking on the actual text itself, and then moving that over a selection and making a new layer via copy. And we talked about area text in here, so let's go ahead and move this around. Oops. Gotta make sure I'm on the right layer. Alright, so we're doing pretty good. The next part of this, I'm going to show you how to do a lot of the effects that are in here, and there's just so many cool effects that can be totally cheesy if you're not careful. So I'll take you through that in the next video.